Hello students, I am your science teacher Anshu. We'll be continuing with our chapter Force and Pressure. Now before we start, let's have recap of what we did yesterday. Yesterday we learned what is force, what are the various effects of the force. Today we'll learn about the magnitude of the force, how we can measure the force and the different types of forces. Let's begin with magnitude of the force. It is also known as the resultant force. It is the net force acting on an object. It is the strength of the force that acts on any object. To understand this, let us see some examples. What happens when the force is applied in the same direction? Suppose this in figure A, this person wants to shift this table. He alone applies the force of 12 Newton. If he is accompanied by someone else who applies a force of 10 Newton in the same direction, the resultant will be the sum of the two forces. So, when the force is applied in the same direction, they add up. What happens when the force is applied in different direction? Suppose in a game of tug of war, both the teams apply force on the rope but in opposite direction. Each of them want to pull the rope towards themselves. The team which applies more force will win the match. Suppose team A applies a 50 Newton of force and B applies 45 Newton. Team A will win because it applies the more force. So, when the force is applied in different directions, the magnitude of the force will be difference of the two forces. What happens? What if the magnitude of the force on object is changing? See, when a ball is filled with small amount of air, it inflates and you can easily play with it. But when some extra amount of air is filled in it, the air particles exert extra force on the walls of the ball and the ball may burst. So, if the magnitude of the ball, if force changes, its effects always changes. Now, how can we measure the force? The force can be measured by using spring balance. There are two types of spring balances. One is the extension spring balance, other is the compression spring balance. In the extension spring balance, when force is applied, the spring inside this elongates. That is why it is known as an extension spring balance. In compression spring balance, the spring compresses. It shortens in the length when force is applied. So this is known as the compression spring balance. Types of forces. There are two types of forces, contact and non-contact forces. Contact forces are exerted when the objects are in physical contact with each other. That is, they touch each other. And non-contact forces occurs when there is no physical contact between the objects on which the force is acting. Contact forces are of two types, muscular and frictional. Non-contact forces are of three types, magnetic, electrostatic and gravitational force. Now we'll study contact forces in detail. There are two types, as I have already told you, muscular force and frictional force. Muscular force apply with our body parts. Muscles are involved to exert such force. This is when we do some work, lifting, when weight is lifted, pulling of the bullock carts, all these require a muscular force. Then the frictional force. Friction opposes the motion of any objects. It can be defined as the resistance to the motion experienced when two surfaces in contact move in opposite direction. Suppose the bullock cart is moving in this direction and frictional force will be in this direction. So this force opposes the motion of the bullock cart. We'll read about friction in the next chapter. An interesting fact. You might have seen some shooting stars. They are the small rocky pieces which are left in the universe. When they enter the Earth's atmosphere, they get burned up because of the frictional force of the atmosphere. So they appear as shooting stars. With this, we finish with the contact forces. In tomorrow's class, we will be studying the non-contact forces. That's all for the day today. Book pages covered and in between questions will be uploaded on the school website.